Hello and welcome to the very special edition of the Irish Wrestling Podcast. My name is Mark O'Brien, and today I'm joined by somebody incredibly special. Somebody who played a huge part in my childhood, particularly in the initial years of my wrestling fandom. To many views, he'd be this part of the world, be the exact same boat. He's formerly a sportscaster, a radio host, DJ, wrestling commentator, an executive, a manager, pundit, believe it or not, a wrestler, a ring announcer, a talent scout, and of late a podcaster as well. I'm joined by the one and the only Mr. Kevin Kelly. Kevin, how's that for an introduction?
uh, you know, it's pretty rough, and it just makes me sound like A, I can't keep a job. I have to do other things, and B, I'm really old because I've been around so long, and I've had time to do all these things. For personal experience, when you want to be involved in an industry, and it doesn't necessarily mean one job within that industry because there are so many jobs that are needed. Um, but I think what at the core of every job in wrestling, it's like if wrestling is in your heart, then you could do anything. Whether it's wrestling, announcing, writing, podcasting, promoting, you name it. If wrestling's in your heart, you can do it. And if it's not in your heart, then you'll go find another industry to work in.
Yeah, I think that's something we talked about this off air just a minute ago. I attended a seminar you did here for people in this part of the world for wrestling commentators, and one of the key takeaways you gave us on that day was around if you're involved in an independent level of promotion, don't just think you're only here for commentating. Volunteer to be a manager, volunteer to put chairs out, volunteer to help out in any possible way, be it postering, flyering, whatever you can. If you enjoy wrestling, you want to be involved, you want to move up the food chain, get involved and offer your services. So listen, that resonates hugely with me. But I will be very conscious of your time. As I said at the start, I started watching wrestling in 1999. I was 7 years old. I remember vividly. I wasn't allowed to watch at the time. Saturday mornings on a channel called Sky One here, they used to replays a couple of days later on of SmackDown, followed by Livewire or the Bottom Line later on. It was called. Invariably, more often than not, you'd be involved in an incredible segment, and I still remember so many of these different things and different terms of phrase from those backstage segments you did with The Rock a lot of the time at that time. Obviously, he's just come back to wrestling recently. What was that like working that kind of era between 1996 and 2003 when you're a hugely part of the WWE? Those memories of being a backstage interviewer and having being part of those segments that have gone on to live on 20 plus years later.
They liked it as well. Um, it was a crazy time. It was very energizing. It was a very positive atmosphere, um, fun and conducive to creativity. So if we were in the office, and again, when I was an announcer, I was also managing editor of WWE publications. What did I know about magazines? Nothing. But we needed somebody to be there, to be in this chair, to also help write. And the people who had the media experience, they kind of taught me what a managing editor did. And then I realized, oh, okay, it's just keeping everybody on schedule. I can do that. And it was easy. It was only like three of us, but that's that was the fun and the excitement of that time. And of course, the challenge is, balancing home life. But that was all part of it. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about the sanitized versions of the programming that was rebroadcast for Sky One at that time,
Yeah.
and all the edit sessions that would be going on, and the revoicing of certain segments because you can't talk about this or you can't that. It took a whole team of people to put those shows together every week.
Yeah, I was aged between the age of like say 7 and 9 at that time watching those shows, and I remember vividly a couple of years later when they started showing the non-sanitized versions on Sky One, and seeing somebody get hit with a chair at the back or put through a table, and it wasn't panned to a crowd shot, which more often than not were the exact same panned crowd shots every single week. Um, it was completely blew my mind. It almost kind of stomach churning at the time. But there was a couple of different segments I just wanted to very briefly touch on. There's one that stuck in my mind back in the summer of 2000 when you're with The Rock at the time. I still to this day, I'm not quite sure how you did it. You had a segment with him backstage. He was about to face Chris Benoit for the WWF Championship. He kind of turned his back to the camera, covered you up, and then the next thing you know, he turns around and you're either missing a tooth or he's managed to draw a black mark where your tooth used to be. for a very inquisitive child who was very shook as to what had happened to this poor commentating man. What happened to you? How did you manage to pull that off in such a quick space of time?
He had black wax
Ah, okay,
and had it formed in his fingers.
okay.
And then when the time was right, I opened my mouth. He fits it around my tooth and pinches it.
Oh, right,
And then
okay.
I had to go, which was harder than I thought. Like, it's hard to make your, like,
Yeah,
open your mouth and go, show us your teeth, show us
yeah,
your Benoit teeth. And it was hard to do. But yeah, so we practiced that once. That was a lot of fun. It was just different ways, different creative ways for him to get under his opponent's skin and to use me as a foil. As you know, and
yeah,
that was the how can we use Kevin to get the point across of the promo?
yeah.
Um, and sometimes he'd be angry and would just shove me out of the frame because it was all about him and the words. And then other times it would just be like, let's take it to the next level of goofing on somebody and use Kevin in that regard.
When you watch modern wrestling now, me and my own lens now, you watch a lot of be it commentators, referees, backstage interviews. A lot of people don't necessarily aren't as willing to put themselves in strange circumstances or awkward situations to get the talent over as you were. I remember vividly at that time that you stuck out for that reason and it came across incredibly selflessly. So listen, thank you very, very much. That added to my own fandom and experience as a child more than anything. But pivoting from my kind of childhood fandom, you were a huge part of my teenage fandom then, particularly when you kind of pivoted over to Ring of Honor. That was a time when I thought I was kind of cool and edgy by watching Ring of Honor from particularly say like 2010 onwards. You're part of that kind of re-rising of Ring of Honor into the Carrie Silkin era and then later Sinclair Broadcasting, where a huge amount of talent who are still featuring to this day across WWE and across AEW and other various different promotions across the world. You were the voice for a lot of us who were just kind of getting into that product at the time. What was that like being part of that promotion that was kind of creating a groundswell, moving from being just a small independent show to almost being a third challenger brand within the space of wrestling?
It was easy to be successful there
Mhm.
as an announcer. When you have incredible talent, it is easy to sound good. I was the beneficiary of having a lot of great talent around me who, and also because of the skills and the experience that I had had doing television, I was able to benefit the company and able to benefit them by having gone through similar experiences in WWE and say, oh, that may not work. Try it this way because so and so did it this way and it worked, you know. And they, oh, okay, great. Um, and they were all very like open minded and let's just try to do the best that we can. So um, it was just a perfect scenario for and if you look at what modern television product is today, a lot of what they're doing is formatted kind of around the same Ring of Honor TV show that we did, the weekly show. Um, and the live events were the live events. The TV show was kind of like a drop into a live event,
Hmm.
which was I would have liked me personally if I was producing that show. I would have made it more episodic
Mm,
and more angle driven, but that's not what necessarily the Ring of Honor fan at that time would
hmm.
have wanted. I probably would have failed and been out of a job. But the way that the show was done, first with Cornette as the producer and then Delirious as producer, it worked. It
Yeah.
worked really, really well. And like you said, there's so many guys that are still going today, going strong. And didn't they all say, oh, with that style, these guys won't be walking by the time they're 40?
Mm.
I don't know. There's a bunch of dudes that are in their 40s who were in Ring of Honor. And not only are they still walking, they're still like main eventing.
Mhm.
So, yeah, they may be banged up, but so is every professional wrestler. It's a hard business no matter what you do.
Yeah, I think it's a reflection of like any line of work, particularly in kind of performance art or sports. Like it depends on how well you look after yourself. And the people who are commenting, suggesting that people may not be able to walk are likely people who, once they finish a match, weren't necessarily going to have an ice bath or a sauna or a stretch after their match or try to recover. They might have been going to a bar or having different activities in the evening that mightn't
Yeah.
have helped their recovery as such. So it's funny kind of looking back at that time. But look, what were your kind of key abiding memories as a commentator at that time through Ring of Honor when you've got a huge cast of characters are now kind of they've taken over the wrestling world over the last 10 plus years.
It was everything, because a lot of the guys had never done TV before. So it
Mm,
was make sure that you're looking at the hard camera, make sure that you're facing in the right direction. Um, when we would do in-ring interview or in-ring introductions with Bobby Cruz, let's uh let's walk through it and make sure that when, so Bobby's in the center and uh somebody's in the corner to his left, somebody's in the corner to his right. When you step forward for your introduction, where's the camera going to be? Where is, because there's a handheld in the ring, and how are they going to position? So a lot of little stuff
yeah.
that was taken care of with rehearsals. Rehearsals to me are always the key. Let's walk through it at least once so everybody, camera, truck, talent, everybody's comfortable with it, and then we can go forward.
Well, for,
Um,
yeah.
and it wasn't like it wasn't like a steep learning curve. A lot of these guys had never done television before, but they took to it. Like, for example, Kyle O'Reilly.
Mm,
When Kyle O'Reilly started, he was kind of like the understudy to Davey Richards.
hmm
And we thought that Kyle was, kind of a shy guy and soft spoken. And yes, there was a part of him that was. But then when he, came up with this other area and other direction that he wanted to go, especially teaming with Bobby Fish, here came this big bold personality,
yeah.
and sarcastic and funny and driven, and yet when the bell rings, he's going to smash you.
Mm,
So it was tapping into all of those things, being open to talent suggestions. I would like to do this. I remember Bobby and Kyle saying that they wanted to be like douchebags and wear scarves and do things that were just douchey. And it was like, oh yeah, you guys got it,
yeah.
um, and then by the time they came back from their first shows in Japan, the people loved them because they had just gone to Japan. And the tie-in with New Japan was a great thing for Ring of Honor. It was a great thing for New Japan Pro Wrestling. We helped put that deal together in whatever it was in 2013, 14.
hmm
It took a while.
Yeah.
Ring of Honor wasn't all that excited to work with New Japan Pro Wrestling because I don't think they understood it.
Mm.
But we just said you have to try it, and once you try it, you'll see. And they saw and was like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah, it was a huge benefit to both companies, and like you were a huge part of that. Particularly, it's funny you kind of look at the different rises of different companies, different stages. Like you look at that kind of keep peak attitude era. You're a big part of the WWE. You're a big part of that Ring of Honor rise, and then when you pivoted over full time to New Japan back in 2016, 2017, you were a huge part of that. Say the rise of Bullet Club, the rise of Okada, and so many more different cast of characters at that time. What was that like? Were you cognizant of you're walking into New Japan at kind of almost a golden era, or something's about to launch here as it's just getting hot, as it's pivoting from more a pure Japanese centric promotion to be a bit more international?
When I got there, um, the unspoken thing was that Shinsuke was going to leave.
Mm,
Nobody nobody was talking about it, but I think it was well known and certainly felt at a gut level.
mm,
And there was great concern as to how that was going to affect business.
mm,
Third generation beginning to age out, and we're not quite sure what we've got with Shibata.
mm,
We know we can count on Tanahashi and Okada and Naito,
mm,
but we don't know what else we've got.
mm,
We know that there's a lot of interest from WWE with our guys,
mm,
so we better get moving. And they used again a lot of the foreigners to come over to help bridge that gap. Plus, getting Yo and Show and Hiromu back at just the right time. Will Ospreay certainly helping a great deal. Kenny Omega transition. Think about it.
yeah,
It's like, how can you prepare for something you don't know is going to happen?
yeah,
So Kenny Omega was ready to step up into the Shinsuke spot.
mm,
Um, and that was like seamless. And he took it to another level.
mm,
He wasn't, that supernova like Shinsuke was. He was
mm,
different, but it filled in the gap.
mm.
And that's really all you want to do is just fill in the gap and then hope to grow. Um, I had no idea that it was going to turn into the the global product that it was,
Mm.
that it was going to continue to be and become even more prevalent in the United States. But probably by the time like 2017 rolled around, it was like, oh yeah, we're on to something here. This is hot.
Yeah.
This this is the hot brand. It was more than just the novelty of going to see it once at a Ring of Honor show. It was like this is a brand that could stand on its own. So, and that's where they got to.
Yeah, and listen, you're a huge part of that, particularly lending your voice, being kind of the music to the ring, what's being produced in the ring, as people kind of use it for a turn of phrase, and particularly at a time when, through no fault of their own, you watch various other wrestling products, and the commentary can almost be kind of grating. You're like, oh God, that's another cliche being trotted out there. You had that kind of sports centric lens. And even when I remember vividly over the years seeing you tweet about, say, G1s on the horizon, and you'd be pinpointing certain fixtures of matches that would be pivotal towards who would be the eventual outcome winner of the tournament. That's something you would do, particularly say like in this part of the world in football. If you're looking at say the Champions League, what are the key fixtures going to be for your team and your group? Be the same in American sports, be it NFL, NBA, or whatnot. Having that sports centric lens was unique at the time, and to be honest, it still is quite unique in wrestling. It's not actually that done, despite what other people say. Were you cognizant that you were playing a huge part in that? Like, obviously, you're getting huge acclaim and kudos from the likes of the Wrestling Observer and whatnot. But were you cognizant of you were really adding layers to the product that's being presented to the ring, particularly for the English speaking audience?
That's all I want. And thank you very much for the compliments on that. But all I wanted to do was to embrace the community that was already in existence of New
Mm,
Japan fans, because every time I would post something or every time I would get into a conversation with somebody, it would lean me towards learning about somebody new who had written something or had done a podcast about something. So I'm pulling quotes from here and there, and because I wanted to expand the community, first put them over for doing the great stuff that they were doing,
yeah.
while at the same time, the shooting themselves in the foot by not allowing people to post gifs or whatever. That was
Yeah.
I whatever. But so let's grow that community.
Yeah.
Let's expand and show that yeah, this is mainstream because writers and podcasters and other people are talking about this and watching it in places near and far, but near to where you live. Oh,
Hmm.
you're in Ireland. Guess what? There are other fans in Ireland who are watching.
Hmm.
I wanted to tear down the barriers that, the language always would present, but I also wanted to show everybody that it doesn't matter what language it's in, it's
Hmm.
digestible. You can understand it by watching it.
Yeah.
And that's why I had to be sharp, and add not just beyond context. I also had to add value
Yeah.
because wrestling can be watched on mute,
Hmm.
and we don't need the commentators.
Hmm.
So we were always aware of needing to provide value.
Yeah, and listen, I love the amount of statistics you're able to provide. Like, and that's a lot of people with a wrestling lens might say, "Oh, statistics won't appeal to children, or they won't know what's going on." But I was over in Scotland on the weekend. I've got little cousins who are between the age of 5 and 10, and they can tell me who scored how many goals for Celtic Football Club this season so far, who scored when, how many games they played. Children are like they take in details like that, and that's the type of thing they want to regurgitate to their friends when they're watching a wrestling product. Now, I'm not saying children are watching New Japan World to watch G1s every year, every night. But that's the type of commentary that I personally adore, and I like structure within wrestling. And a structure allows you to create simple stories and narratives off the back of it. And I think there's not enough tournaments and sports-based content within the space of wrestling, despite what other people claim there is. So again, huge appreciation for that. But you got to work with some kind of an interesting cast of characters in terms of commentating
Oh boy.
partners. Yeah. So I mean, from the likes of Matt Stryker to Steve Corino, you worked with like Don Callis, and they would all kind of have their own flavors. Even then, later on down the line, like Chris Charlton and Walker Stewart, obviously kind of replacing you later down the line as well. But they'd all kind of bring their own flavor of things. Like I quite enjoyed. I don't know if you're familiar with pantomime over in this part of the world in terms of that kind of buffoonery or kind of over the top nature of like you'd be
Mm-hmm.
very kind of straight down the line playing the straight man and Don would be coming out with some outrageous quip, just kind of being a bit over the top, being overzealous to try antagonize fans and bring that kind of sports entertainment almost commentating to the proceedings. What was it like working with each of them?
It was again, each of them had their own point of view.
Mm,
They all had their own concerns about, am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough? Is this okay? Is this, and some are more pronounced than others. Like Don didn't really ever seem to care what anybody thought, although
Yeah.
he was very quick to defend himself against the thing that he said people were accusing him of, but was nonsense. But when you look at Steve Corino, was that all right? You think that was all right? You know, and then looking back on it, we realize how good it was and how special it was. Uh, Gino Gambino was one of my favorites because he was a diamond in the rough. I didn't realize how good he was,
Yeah.
and neither did he, quite frankly, until he started to do it. And now he's doing commentary for mixed martial arts and other sports in Australia. He's doing fantastic.
Hmm.
And of course, Chris Charlton, who
Mm.
was brilliant, but was not a, a he was the almost the furthest thing you would think of for a commentator. But he grew and developed and was always a fantastic storyteller writing wise,
Hmm.
but then became a fantastic narrator.
Mm.
And I grew up in the United States, and I was listening to sports uh legends like Haywood Hale Broon and Jim McKay and others generationally who would, opine on a certain subject and write this beautiful prose. That's what Chris was able to bring,
Mm.
and developed his voice and his point of view. And I couldn't have been happier with how everything turned out.
Yeah, like I personally love Chris Charlton when he's on commentary. I have a New Japan World subscription, listen and watch regularly. But I love his authenticity kind of comes across. He doesn't sound like he's suddenly pretending to be an American wrestling commentator. Like you watch a lot of independent shows, particularly in this part of the world. I find that it can kind of grate me personally. Some people are they're saying things that you wouldn't necessarily say with a UK accent or an Irish accent or somewhere around Europe. They're regurgitating lines you may have heard from the early 90s or late 90s, 2000s, whatever it is. But his authenticity and his ability in his latter days to emote as well and get stories across and talk about the importance of New Japan as well, I thoroughly appreciate it. But
And the good news is that if anybody's been missing Chris on New Japan broadcast, he's going to be back,
Mhm.
and back for good from the anniversary show. So coming up here at the beginning of March, Chris Charlton will be back Mike's side, and having served his 2 month suspension, whatever,
Mhm.
water under the bridge now. But nevertheless, the idea of being a great storyteller in a time in New Japan where we're telling the story of an unlikely but overdue world champion in Hiroki Goto taking on the man who rewrote the history book in terms of the heavyweight title, Hiroshi Tanahashi. And Tanahashi was someone who kept thwarting Goto time and time again. When the two of them were in the eliminator match, one of their last
Mhm.
prominent singles match that jumps to my mind was that eliminator match for the AEW title.
Mhm.
The winner would go on to fight Moxley at
Mhm.
Forbidden Door.
Mhm.
And of course, Tanahashi won
Mhm.
because that's what Goto does. Goto does not win the big one.
Yeah.
And now he's won the big one.
Mhm.
Last run before he hangs it up at Wrestle Kingdom. Boy, it'd be something sweet about seeing Tanahashi with that belt raised one more time. Um, well, I don't know. And if Goto wins here, let's think about this. He could go on a run
Mhm.
because we know that Yuji Nagata has challenged Goto.
Mhm.
So if he gets past Tanahashi, where I would imagine that Tanahashi is maybe a slight favorite,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's at least him. I
Okay.
think Goto would be a solid favorite against Nagata. Then you're up against Dominion. And who's he going to face at Dominion? For me, the match that I want to see, and I don't think we'll ever see it, would be Goto versus Katsuyori Shibata.
Mhm.
And it would be just poetic that those two high school friends would do battle over the IWGP Heavyweight title. But I don't think we're going to see that match because of
Mhm.
Shibata's condition, New Japan's perception of Shibata's condition,
Mhm.
physical condition, and So I don't think we're going to get to see that. So then, okay, if not them, then who? It's not going to be Naito.
Hmm.
Is it a rematch with Dak? Is
Hmm.
it someone else? And then he'll go through the G1. If he gets through Dominion, he'll go through the G1 as champion. And now then we're looking at maybe all the way through the fall and certainly all the way to Wrestle Kingdom.
Hmm.
So if he gets past Tanahashi, it could be a decent run for Hiroki Goto, but he's got to get through the first one first.
Yeah, and he's got a lovely wave of new fresh talent coming through as well as in New Japan. I mean, I personally I coach rugby. I coach at an age of under 20s when guys have just finished secondary school and they're trying to progress into college rugby as well or into the professional game. So I really enjoy seeing who's coming next in sports. What's in the next wave of talent, be it in NFL, you're looking at who's in the draft every year. I love the New Japan's ability to make new stars, have new waves of stars coming through on a yearly basis. So you've got the likes of Yoda Tsuji, you've got Yu Yu Mura, you've got Gabe Kidd, you've got Shota Umino, you've got more and more and more talents coming through. And I've no doubt within a year or two, the ability to create new stars will be prevalent as we head into additional Forbidden Door shows. And I personally would love to see, as somebody I've trained with and known years ago, would be Gabe Kidd in a Wrestle Kingdom main event, particularly off the back of this past Wrestle Kingdom. Um, Now, you're somebody who's obviously incredibly close to the New Japan product. If anybody follows you on social media, you're incredibly passionate about it. You kind of provide incredible insights, very emotive and analytical points of view as well. Have you had any conversations with the New Japan about potentially returning at some point, be it work with New Japan Strong or working remotely, provide English commentary at all?
I've talked with, well, Chris and I talked about maybe me going back for Wrestle Kingdom
Hmm.
for Tanahashi's last match. But I don't think it went any further than that. I think it was something that he was going to run up the flagpole to see if anybody would salute.
Hmm.
I would love to, but at
Hmm.
this point in time, I don't think that's going to happen. Walker's doing a great job. They're not
Yes.
looking to replace him.
Yeah.
It would just to have me come in and you know add my add my point of view as the third man.
Hmm.
If Walker couldn't make it, for example, uh, would I be available to do something? Yeah, sure. But I think again that they can find ways to have Walker voice those shows since they're already paying him. But yeah, it'd
100%.
be fun. I would love to go back for Wrestle King.
Yeah, 100%. I think there'd be value as well as a fan in watching kind of the two younger commentators having a more established veteran commentator and a different tone of voice and a different point of view as well. I think it would blend well with the three different personalities too. And Walker's been incredibly complimentary of you and all the help and assistance you've given him. As so many people in the wrestling space have been, particularly those who worked on screen, be it in interview capacity, ring announcing, independent shows across the United States and Europe as well. I'm incredibly conscious of your time though, Kevin. Thank you very, very much. I know you've got a huge amount of going on. You're going all around America. You're doing seminars, you're doing shows, you're helping people across the world with various different tutorials and whatnot, as you've helped me a couple of years ago. You've got your own promotion on the go. Um, where can fans find you nowadays? You've got your own podcast as well. What projects do you have in the horizon, and where can fans find you these days?
We've got a lot going on, and the podcast is something I'm very excited about. I was always like very cautious of getting into a crowded podcasting space, but what would be the point of view I would bring? And my friend Casey Thompson, who I've known for 30 years, going on 30 years, um, he had the point of view of I always wanted to do a podcast, Kevin, because what's it like from the enhancement guy's point of view?
Hmm.
And he was always listed as it would say, you know, Paul Orndorff versus in ring, and in ring would be written in bold letters. And it didn't matter who it was. They were going to be in the ring when Paul Orndorff's music played, and here he comes and doing his thing. And his opponent currently in the ring from Orlando, Florida, Casey Thompson.
Okay, okay. Hello, how are you? Sorry, cut off once again there. I was just saying, listen, you've got your the In-Ring podcast dropping weekly episodes on YouTube. You've obviously got your own promotion. You're working with American Excellence Wrestling. You've been doing work with the likes of AML Wrestling. You're popping all around America, giving seminars, helping people out wherever you can. Do you have any other specific projects on the horizon where fans can find you, be it on social media or whatnot?
Oh, of course, they can always find me on Twitter at Real Kevin Kelly, and the same on Instagram, and seek me out on Facebook, and threaten Mark O'Brien with a good time and have him contact me. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I worked Friday night. We got up, I stayed up all night Friday, worked until Saturday morning. went to the airport, flew across the country, did a 4 hour seminar, and then a 3 hour show, and then got back to the hotel and almost overslept for a 2 p.m. flight. That's how tired I was. And then flew back across the country and got home at about two in the morning, Monday morning. And here we are again. We're at it.
God.
But that's the life. That's what you do. It's fun and it's not work. Like the first thing that we talked about was having it in the heart. And that's where it is.
Yeah, listen, Dev, your passion comes exudes across the screen on any platform I've ever seen you on. So I do listen. Thank you for all your work. Thank you for being a huge part of my wrestling fandom from my childhood age, my teenage years, my twenties, and now my thirties. I want to thank you hugely, and I can't wait to see what's in the horizon for you now, my friend.
I can't wait to meet you in person. I need to come to Ireland. I need to come over there and I need to see friends like you and so many others that I've met and talked with across the interwebs all these many years, but I want to be there in person.
Absolutely. The day you do come over to this part of the world, be it Ireland or the UK, I 100% will be there, my friend. So thank you very, very much.
Okay, thank you. Great time.